Alright guys, welcome to episode 1 of the Dove podcast.
Catch a flight and get away. Just take a little break, yeah, let's have a good time. Yeah, you got keys to a paradise, and you gotta do it safe, so and baby, we can get away.
Alright guys, welcome to episode 1 of the Dove podcast. In today's podcast, I'm going to basically go over the purpose of this podcast. Why did I start this podcast? But before we get there, I'm going to kind of introduce myself. I'm going to kind of give a little throwback to the first day of high school or the first day of college when the teacher walks in and she's like, hey, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. So you've got like a minute, 2 minutes, have at it. So, my name is Jonathan Dove. I'm from a very, very small town in Georgia called Royston, Georgia. If you're not familiar with Royston, it is actually the home of Ty Cobb. And if you don't know who Ty Cobb is, just Google him. He's a very, very ruthless and very old, dead baseball player. But he was like the most ruthless baseball player to ever step foot on the diamond. So anyway, I graduated from Franklin County High School, and then after high school, I went off to play college baseball. The college went under, their baseball program went away, so I came back home. Tried to play for a college back home, and it just didn't work out. Their program wasn't what I was looking for. And my life from that point for the next 10 years just came tumbling down on top of me. I fell into like a huge depression. The girl that I dated for 6 years, from like 8th grade all the way into like our second year, first or second year of college, we broke up, and that just made things even worse. Kind of spiraled out of control. When I came back home from college, I was living with my parents. Didn't really know what I was doing until I found a job in like the closest, biggest city around. And if you're not familiar with Athens, Georgia, it was actually voted the #1 college party town in the US. So just kind of use your imagination. I lived with 3 other friends of mine. And let's just say for like 4 or 5 years, it was pretty crazy. But then finally, I realized that I wasn't going anywhere with my life. I didn't know what I was doing. So I did like the craziest thing that I would have never thought I would do. I walked into a recruiter's office, raised my right hand, and signed the dotted line and joined the military. And if you would have told me that I was going to join the military when I was in high school, I would have literally laughed in your face. There's no way I was joining the military when I was younger, because my identity was wrapped up in baseball and the girl that I dated. That's who I identified as. I identified as a baseball player, and I identified as the boyfriend of the hottest girl in high school. Yeah. So, I mean, that's literally who I was. And then once those things were taken away from me, I did not know who I was. Like, I literally did not know who I was. So I went through my early 20s, late 20s, just partying all the time. And then I joined the military, and then that's when everything changed. Like, my whole world flipped upside down for the better. I knew it was for the better, but I put it off for 2 or 3 years. I remember going snow skiing, and I was in a chairlift, and my brothers were with me, and I told them, I was like, hey, I'm going to join the Air Force. And they both laughed, and they were like, yeah, okay, whatever. 2 years later, I joined the military. It was the scariest thing that I've ever done in my life, but it was the best thing for me. Like, it made me grow up. It made me realize who I was. It gave me a sense of purpose. The military literally gave me a sense of purpose. I knew I wanted to serve in some capacity, and at the time I was really involved in the medical field. At the time I wanted to be a nurse, and that was the main reason why I joined the military, was to kind of get that experience. But that was short-lived, and that's a whole another story that we'll actually dive into later. But yeah, and that kind of led me to where I am today. Today I live in Las Vegas, which is absolutely crazy. Take a kid from a very small town in Georgia and go through all the crazy experience that I went through, from the college life to the military to now living in Las Vegas, while my family is thousands of miles away, and I'm a huge family person. It's very unusual for us to not go a day without talking. So anyway, so that's who I am. This is where I am right now. I'm in Las Vegas, and I've kind of found my purpose. I know exactly who I am, the reason why I've been put on this earth. And that kind of leads me to something that I heard in a podcast the other day. And it stuck with me. As soon as I heard it, I literally told myself, okay, this is all you need to focus on. And it really hit home. And what it was, the thing that person said was, you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. And when I heard that, I was like, wow. The person I am today is who I wish I had to look up to 10 years ago. If I would have had this person, if I was actually searching for this person 10 years ago, my life would have been totally different. But I'm glad it wasn't that way, because of everything that I learned to get to where I am. Which leads me to the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast, it's going to sound totally crazy, this number that I'm about to throw out. So the purpose of this podcast is to be able to help 1 million people find their purpose. That is the purpose of this podcast. That is why I literally hit that record button and talk in this camera, because of the experience that I've gained over the past 10 years. If I can just help one person find their purpose, I literally am on the right track to do what I've been put on this earth to do. Because what that'll do is, once I help that one person find their purpose, then they'll help someone else. Because this is how I see it. It's kind of the formula that I see. The formula that I see is two things. Everyone has a passion, and I think everyone on this planet is put on this planet to serve people, to be able to help people. And everybody has a passion. Literally everybody has a passion. So if you can take your passion and figure out how to serve people through your passion, with those two things put together, that's literally your purpose. It's that simple. once you know your passion, figure out how you can serve people with your passion, and that's your purpose. And knowing that my life experiences and fitness and everything that I do to help maintain who I am to become a better person, I can take all those things that I've learned and that I'm passionate about, and I can take that and serve people, whether it's through this camera or teaching someone how to become a healthier person through fitness. I know that is who I am meant to be. So that's the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is for me to tell my stories and then eventually bring other people on the podcast that has gone through that journey to figure out who they are in order to help you figure out what your passions are and what your purpose is and how to use all of that to serve people. And whether like you can serve people in any way, like people at Chick-fil-A, that's why they're like one of the biggest and best fast food restaurants in America, is because they literally create the best service for people, and it makes you feel good. And they serve chicken sandwiches. Like, that's how simple it is. If you can find something that you're passionate about and figure out a way to serve people that way, there's your purpose. Like, that's literally your purpose. I know it sounds very simple, but it took me like literally 10 years to figure this out. And I'll tell you guys like a really, really quick story. And he doesn't know this, or he might know this. I'm sure he does. But I remember when I was probably 22 or 23. And I remember at the time, my mom wanted me to get into real estate because she's a real estate broker. And at the time, like I really had like didn't have a passion for it, but I had a really big interest in it because I really liked homes. I liked really nice houses. I liked the architecture of houses. And my mom, she suggested that I get my realtor's license. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And I remember after having that conversation, I remember walking down the hall towards the kitchen, and my dad met me in the hall, and he he said, "You don't need to do the real estate thing." He said, "You need to be with everything that you enjoy doing. You like working out. You're very athletic. You like helping people. You need to be a personal trainer." And I remember literally laughing at him and saying, "I don't want to be a personal trainer. Like they don't make enough money." And at the time, like I don't really know if they made a lot of money or not, but that thought never crossed my mind, because real estate was like, you can make a lot of money in real estate. And at the time, that's all I was thinking about, was just making money. Like, what's the easiest way to make a whole lot of money? That's all I was thinking about at the time. But my dad could take a step back and he could see what my life revolved around. My life revolved around being athletic and working out. And he knew that was my interest. And he could tell that I was like literally doing that every single day. And so I think if you can kind of take a step back and do like a overview of who you are, and just write down, like literally write down what your interests are, what you find yourself doing in your off time. maybe your passion is in there. And I could, looking back on it, like that's literally what my dad was doing. He knew who I was. He knew what my interest was. And so he was right. Like he was literally right. And if you're listening to this, which I know you are, I just want to thank you for that. And I'll always be grateful that you took the time to see and know who I really was and give me advice and try to lead me down that path. But at the time I wasn't ready for it. But I just truly want to thank you for putting that in there, because every day when I think about what I'm doing, and I just kind of remember back, like I literally can see us walking down the hall and you telling me exactly who I was, but I just wasn't ready for it. But I just want to thank you for planting that little seed, and that really meant a lot to me. Now, especially looking back on it. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. I'll never forget that. So yeah, with that being said, that is basically the purpose of this podcast. I will give you guys every ounce of stories of everything that I've learned over these past 10 years. And I kind of want to talk about a lot of deep, dark stuff that has helped me get to where I am. And I want to structure it to be able to help you guys, because everybody is going through something. Like, I literally know that everybody is definitely going through something in their life. Nobody's life's perfect. So if you guys can relate to some of my stories and something that I tell you guys, hopefully you can take away a little key things from this podcast to be able to help implement your life, to be able to not go down the path. If you're that kind of person, maybe you're the type of person who just needs to learn it yourself, which is fine. A lot of us are like that. So that is totally fine. But that is the purpose of this podcast. And there is a way eventually I want to be able to track how many people that I help, because it literally is a goal to be able to help 1 million people find their purpose. So yeah, that is basically this whole podcast wrapped up into one. And yeah, I think that's it. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell button, because it'll let you know when I post. And I plan on posting every Monday from here until I run out of stories that I can give you guys. And then once I run out of my stories, I'm going to bring on some pretty cool people that I've met in Vegas. And you think I have some stories? I can't wait for a couple of people to come on the podcast. It's gonna be great. I'm really excited. I really think this podcast has a lot of potential to reach and to make a difference in so many people's lives. So yeah, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next week.